Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Hopefully everyone's good out there, man. You already know, Looper Norris. Another episode going over the most recent rap albums of 2023, 2024. I got a new album to react to for today's episode, but before I go over that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the music I have coming up for the future. So of course, got the new track, Waldo. That's set for December 4th. That's the official day for that track. I got another track dropping for December 14th. I'm going to talk more about that track once I drop Waldo. Then I'll give you guys more information about that. And I got a new album that I'm currently working on, set for next year, the end of spring, the beginning of the summer, around that time, like I'd say around May. This one's a 10-track album. I'll talk more about the concept and the name of the album once I drop Waldo. Then I'll give you guys that information. Lots of music on the way. I got a lot of singles in the vault, so subscribe to the channel. Make sure you like the video. Also, today we're gonna do the new album by ASAP Ferg, Darold. This is a new album he released very recently, I think about like last month or so. Just like every other episode, I'm gonna basically give you guys my full critique about the album. I just went through the full album track by track, give you guys a rating at the end of the video. I'm gonna play about 4 songs off the album, just a snippet of each song. We're gonna get started with this one. New album by ASAP Ferg, Darold. He dropped 3 days ago. So I'm gonna play about 4 songs off of the album. This is all off of SoundCloud, and I'm only playing a snippet of each track, give you guys an idea of how this one sounds like. The first track I'll play, this one's called Messy.
I ain't have to keep the hammer tucked. They ain't on shit, they vegan. Eating don't care like you quinoa.
This one's called Demons, featuring Denzel Curry.
These niggas up on myself. Before I was dying, I grip my soul and keep it away from the demon. Going through drama, created the trauma, that shit will make you a...
This one's called French Tips, featuring Coco Jones.
Tom, wake me up for lunchtime, pass me the great coupon. Don't do coupons, your ex was on Groupon.
The last track I'll play, this one's called Alive, featuring Dapper Dan.
Uber Xing bitches for a night, kid. Addicted to the pussy, learn how to fight that.
ASAP Ferg, new album, Darold. He released this one on November 8th. So this one is pretty new, fresh album. This guy's very famous for working with the ASAP crew alongside ASAP Rocky. This is a New York Harlem crew, both rappers from Harlem, New York. This is a crew that was still famous till this day, but they were really popping off maybe like 10 years ago, back in the day during the Purple Swag era. It's kind of funny, man. When I was a lot younger, I was a big fan of ASAP Rocky when he first dropped music. I was like, yo, who is this new rapper, man? Like, I heard a little bit about ASAP Rocky and I was curious to know who the rapper was and what he's about, because he was building a lot of buzz around the area. Everyone's talking about ASAP this, ASAP that. At the same time, there was a lot of people talking about the Raider clan, how Space Ghost and ASAP Rocky were beefing. So around that time, that's when I first heard about ASAP Rocky. I heard about how they were like a crew of rappers and producers, just like Raider clan and Odd Future. A lot of the members that weren't being talked about had skills and talent in terms of producing and rapping. I started to hear about this ASAP Ferg guy, and I was like thinking like, yo, this guy could be the best member, or because it's sort of like Earl Sweatshirt and Odd Future. I thought Tyler, the Creator, being the leader of Odd Future, was more talented than everybody in his group, but it was definitely not the case. There was other rappers that were better than Tyler. I was thinking it could be the same case with the ASAP crew, so I started listening to ASAP Ferg, and I'm like, yo, he's not that far off from ASAP Rocky. I thought ASAP Rocky was an incredible lyricist, but ASAP Ferg is not that far off. And honestly, nowadays, I honestly think that ASAP Rocky sort of lost it just a bit, just a little bit. He's still a great lyricist, but I think he was a little bit better back in the day when he was younger. And I feel like ASAP Ferg, as he got older, he got a little bit better at rapping. So nowadays, I think they're a little bit closer to the same level in terms of lyricism. I guess it depends on like the beat and the day. After an album like this, things could definitely change with that. One of the few things that stands out to me with this album is the beat changing. You'll have one beat ASAP Ferg is maybe doing an intro to, and then he'll switch to another beat, starts to go crazy on that one. And when the beats get changed, it's like his style changes with the beat. Producers don't do that enough with their albums. Usually they'll stick to one beat per track. So that's one thing I definitely enjoy on this album, and it's something that a lot of like New York rappers, East Coast rappers I'll say, will like to do even back in the days, closer to like early 2000s, late 2000s, like 90s. A lot of producers out of the East like to switch the beat up, and he does that a lot on this album, but he does it in a way where it makes the album sound better and the songs sound better, because the beats that are being switched are at a high level. It doesn't make you like mad you're listening to one beat that's really good and then it switches to another beat. You know what I mean? It's not like you're thinking like, oh, you should have just kept that first beat the entire way. Like, no, you know what I mean? You enjoy the switch because the next beat that gets played is better than the first beat most of the time. Another thing that I liked about the album, I like the features on this one, man. He chose the perfect features for this album. Extremely talented artists, rather singers or rappers, in terms of like the level of skill and talent and how well they match with the production on the album, and just the whole style of how the album's put together is perfect. It makes the album way better than it would be if he didn't have those same features over just people he maybe knows, like friends in his circle, to feature on the album, which is cool too. But most of the time when rappers do that, they don't do as well as like professional established rappers that's been doing it for like years and years. I like how he features Mary J. Blige, Denzel Curry, Future. Mike Will made it the perfect artist to feature in his album, and everyone did really well. They all kept up with A$AP Ferg, rapping and singing at the same level in terms of like skill. Pretty consistent. There isn't a track that stands out because of how poor it sounds. Everything is like pretty solid in terms of like what the features do and what A$AP Ferg does. It's almost like he tells the features like what exactly he wants for the song out of them, and they execute that perfectly. Like I was saying earlier with the production, how the beat switches pretty often on this one. A$AP Ferg does the same thing with his flow and raps. Stylistically, he switches his style up completely on every track. That's probably one of the most impressive things about the album. It's not the easiest thing to create a completely different style on each beat, especially because like the production on here is pretty generic when you really listen to it. There's nothing too experimental in terms of the beat. The styles through the production are styles that you've heard before numerous times from like different artists from different eras. But I think what makes it different, they're taking the same sounds that you've heard in the past before from like other artists, making it slightly different in a way where it sounds like it's a style that you've never heard before. At the same time, the sound reminds you of like another artist that you've heard from in the past. It doesn't make you think that they're ripping off of that artist, especially with the way A$AP Ferg writes on this one, coming up with ideas that you've never heard in your life before. You've never heard anything similar from like another artist. The fact that his songwriting brings like a different element to the song, it takes away the generic like sound from each song. And like even though each beat is pretty generic, it's not, because of the way A$AP Ferg writes and the way the producers arrange the music in each track. Songs like French Tips featuring Coco Jones, that's a perfect example. This song kind of reminds you of late to mid 90s R&B music. Aaliyah, Mary J. Blige, the sound sort of reminds you of that. And the way Coco Jones is singing on this one definitely sounds like some late 90s R&B, early 2000s. It's really cool that A$AP Ferg is able to do that and also make songs that are like super new sounding, like styles that you would hear in 2024. Songs like Light Work. Like that's a perfect example of a style that's more frequent in today's rap music with like the whole UK drill sound. It's a perfect example. Like every song has like a different like style to it. It forces A$AP Ferg to switch up his flow and his raps at the same time. None of the songs sound exactly the same. That's the biggest highlight of the album. Why I like it a lot. It's a thing that a lot of rappers don't do. Most rappers that you'll hear nowadays, every song sounds exactly the same. A$AP Ferg got out of that basically and tried something a little bit different. And on top of that, the way ASAP Ferg writes, his style of like punchlines and barring up is very distinctive compared to like any other rapper I've heard. So like the fact that he's influenced by different eras of music definitely makes the album a lot better. It sort of reminds me of XXXTentacion, rest in peace. This artist here, Triple X, very famous for doing the same thing, how every track would sound completely different because he was influenced by different eras of rap music. So some songs would be a lot of like singing, R&B, and then he'll have some songs where he's making like some rage stuff. Like every song was almost like a different genre. That's what this album sounds like to me. Every song is like a completely different song that you would pick from like a different era. ASAP Ferg's a little bit of an older rapper. He's in his mid-30s, so it's not too surprising that he would try a style out like this. He's probably learned a lot from rap music over the years, putting music out. He's gotten to a point where he's mastered the art and he really understands the music itself. So not too surprising that he would go with a style like this. So all in all, man, I think the focus of the album was to create good quality music that you can go back to, replayable value, something that you'll remember to for a long time and not something that you'll just listen to once. Created a different experience for the listener. The fact that he's influenced by so much different eras of rap music and he puts it all into one album. I really did enjoy this album. I think it's a very strong, well put together album. The only thing I didn't really like about it, I think he put a little bit too much singing into the album, and I know the artsy musician part of him was like thinking, oh, like have all of these singers on my album, we're gonna like create something different. I can definitely see the approach of why he would do something like that, but I think there's a little bit too much singing on the album. I think it's a little bit too much where it takes away the hip-hop in this from it, and he's even singing on it himself. His voice is like okay. I don't think he's the worst singer or the best singer. I definitely think he's a better rapper than a singer. It doesn't really take away from the album too much because every singer on the album is a strong vocalist. No one outdid anyone else. Everyone is singing at a very high level. It keeps me from rating the album really high. Besides like the too much singing part, I don't really like the UK drill style of like production that he has more in the beginning of the album that a lot of New York and UK rappers will use. I think that sound is super played out. I think he could have went without that sound on this album, could have used like a different style. Just like the singing part that I was saying, it doesn't really take away from the album too much. It's just I would have enjoyed the album a little bit more if he took the UK drill out and if he took just a small portion of the singing out, added more rap into it, because yo, the guy can rap, you know what I mean? He doesn't really have to put too much singing on the album. So I would like to hear his rapping a little bit more on the album. But besides that, there isn't really anything bad I gotta say about the album. The album's pretty solid, pretty legit. I feel like it's one of those albums where the artist was mainly thinking about making good quality music for the listener. An artist making art, and you don't really get a lot of those type of albums from rappers these days. This album sounds more like an art piece rather than a money grabber. I heavily respect ASAP Ferg for making an album like this. He just sat down, really try to like think of fresh ideas that no one's ever heard before and really make something from the heart, because there's a lot of emotional things going on throughout this album too, where he's being super real with himself and how he feels about what's going on in life. In terms of a rating, I'm giving this one an 8.4 out of 10. Like I was saying about the singing and the UK drill style beats, like it could just be a bias thing because I know a lot of people like that style of beat making. A lot of people like singing in rap albums, even if it's like heavy throughout it. But for me, if those two things changed, I would have gave this album a higher rating. He's not that good of a rapper where it's bringing the rating over the top, and the production, it's not the best that I've heard so far this year, but definitely above average. The beats could have been better still on top of that, which would make the rating a little bit higher. There's nothing super experimental about the beats. The beats are generally pretty generic. They're put together at a high level, above average level, but there's still styles that you've heard in the past, and the only thing that's making it different is ASAP Ferg's style of rapping and his style of songwriting. songwriting, 8.4 out of 10. ASAP Ferg, Darold, it's a new album. I appreciate you guys watching today's episode. I got more content and more music on the way. Waldo, that's the next track that I'm dropping for December 4th. So look out for that track. Lots of music to drop afterwards. Albums, EPs, mixtapes. I'll talk all about that. Just subscribe to the channel, comment, like the video. It'll help me a whole lot with the algorithm, and I'd appreciate it to just hit the like button if you're viewing the video. That's all I gotta say for this one. Yeah, I'm out.